Hello, race fans. The quote by Stirling Moss is actually very appropriate for the race you're about to see. Only a 5-lap race, with every lap having its own story and a dramatic ending in the final lap. My first race as an A-rated driver, so extra excitement coming into this one. We have returned to Watkins Glen and we somehow managed to get P2 on the grid with our quali lap, going straight for the slipstream of P1, where we already see the delta coming down. We are heading into the bus stop chicane, which is always a tricky part of this track, especially on colder tires. P1 actually has a really poor run through the chicane, so we are closing in ever so slightly. He misses the last curb and picks up some gravel on his tires, making this corner for him even more tricky. It's actually looking like he might be vulnerable in this last sector, if we can stay close and keeping him under pressure. So that's also why I'm having a few looks on the inside to possibly throw him off. We stay really close to the apex here and he actually drifts a little bit wide. We try and keep the gap as close as possible, still waiting for that potential mistake by P1. And in this corner, he actually has a really poor exit, going wide and picking up a possible track limits penalty. And it might be a setup for a perfect overtake. Yes, El Switcheroo executed to perfection. We take the lead actually in our first race as an A-rated driver. This is, really not what I expected to happen in my first race as an A-rated driver. But yeah, we somehow managed to do the overtake in the first lap. Immediately I try to break his slipstream. He's not following, so I'm going back to the racing line. And then we have a massive moment. It's a massive moment. It might be dry, but seeing what happened, it actually reminds me of the move Max Verstappen pulled in Brazil 2016 in that epic race in the rain, keeping his car out of the barrier. We also somehow keep the car out of the barrier by going back on the throttle as soon as we were back on the track. So somehow we're still in a good place back in P2, and P1 has a penalty still to serve. So we need to stay close enough so that we can overtake him when he serves his penalty. Going a little bit wide in the chicane. The gap is getting bigger, but our heart rate has come down since that moment in turn 1. We try to get back in the rhythm and focus on keeping that gap as close as possible so we can perform the overtake once he serves his penalty. And P3 is also joining the fight for the win now, closing his gap to me also within the second. So this should make things extra interesting once P1 crosses the penalty zone. So at this point he serves his penalty and we get back in P1 and Delta joins back in third position. Now it's time to try and break that slipstream. Skipping to the final corner of the same lap, we actually hit the barrier, taking too much risk. We decide to stay on the racing line and see what happens. We actually put in a fairly reasonable lap considering we had that massive moment at the beginning of the lap. P2 takes the fastest lap and goes for a move into turn 1. Yeah, it's a really clean overtake by him and we tuck him behind on the run to the bus stop chicane. We're still well within the seconds, so the slipstream is helping us keep the gap small. At this point, P1 is trying to break the slip by weaving left and right, but it somehow messes up his run through the chicane. And there he picks up a track limit penalty for going wide. So even though we made a big mistake, the cars we're battling with seem to pick up penalties for track limits quite often. It is keeping us in the race and in the fight for the win. We lost the position to Delta because he made a fairly aggressive move in the turn after the chicane, but all is good and we're fighting with the 3 of us for the win. Again, we're approaching the penalty zone and P1 is going to serve his penalty, giving us the chance to overtake back again. After taking back P2, it's actually time for us to skip ahead to the end of lap 4, where the race will really start to unfold. Again, I managed to stay in the slipstream and keep the gap within the second the whole lap. So now it's all about timing and picking the right moment to make a move. And we actually go for it into turn 1, late on the brakes, and with giving each other space it actually works out, so we're back into the lead. But by no means this will mean we actually win the race. It's now about keeping everybody behind us, and as you can see, it's a three-way battle once again. And we all know in the last lap most racers are usually a little bit more aggressive. So we're going full blast into the bus stop chicane. We actually go in really hot, forcing us to hit the brakes to prevent track penalties. It causes a little panic behind me because I get hit and go wide, but I manage to keep the car in control. This is actually some pretty epic racing, reminding me of the battle between Perez, Leclerc and Hamilton at Silverstone. This is what makes online racing in GT7 so much fun. Yeah, there's a bit of contact here and there, but we're not all professional F1 drivers. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to have a fun race. As you saw, I got a little hit again, but yeah, we managed to keep the car in control and are in the lead going into the final sector. We saw some flashing lights as a distraction, but now it's all about not losing your head and keeping your cool. As he makes a move, we have the inside of the corner, so he backs out. All I have to do now is nail the final corners and hit the apex so nobody can dive on the inside. Into the penultimate corner we go. Cautious but maintaining enough speed. And in the final corner, P2 and 3 actually swapped positions because P2 went wide. As we cross the line for our first ever win as an A-rated driver. Who would have thought that? Most important thing for me though was that this race was just so much fun, and the quote by Stirling Moss really resonates with me in that regard. At the end of the day, we are trying to find our limits, and in that process you might go over the limit once or twice, which is okay. We're all trying to have fun and learn from it, so we can be better the next time we try and go again. At least that's what I try to embrace. I really hope you enjoyed this race. If so, remember to smash that like button, and if you want to see more of these epic races, check out this playlist. Thanks for subscribing and giving me your time and attention by watching this video. See you in the next one.